Hello and welcome to Property Question Time. This is the show where you can have your property related questions answered by a team of property experts. I'm Stephen Galpin, and joining me today is Vincent Wong, CEO of Wealth Dragons Group PLC and mentor and author. Welcome to you.
Thank you.
Joining Vincent is Ben Richards, MD of Aura Architecture. Welcome to you.
Hi.
Hope you've both had a good trip into London. And Ben, we'll start with you.
Cool.
Do the panel think that architects should reduce the complexity and visual extravagances of building design to assist in bringing down the cost of housing?
Interesting question.
It is for an architect, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I can't remember the last time I went to a Persimmons housing estate or a Taylor Wimpey housing estate and thought there's extravagance here. You know, it's generally brick and...
There's worse than those.
Brick and render boxes. Oh, exactly. Yeah, I mean, design plays a big factor in the value of assets. I think that's hard to kind of argue. I think where I found in the past, the biggest complexities from architectural design is typically in how things are built more so than how things look. You know, the facade of things only cost a certain amount, where I've saved the most as a developer. Going through a tender package of information is actually interrogating the internal build-ups of things. So I think design, and that doesn't just go to like visual design, that's the way things are laid out and how things are arranged around the structure and how it integrates between the architect and the engineer and that sort of stuff. And yeah, I think visually, I don't think that things are hugely complex. And I don't think the cost of that complexity is the thing that's going to break it.
Two things I'm going to say, I've said on the show before. I mean, I can think of one developer in northeast London, I think, that was famous for building, and still is famous for building starter homes. Now, the danger is with those starter homes that if you went home in the dark, if the numbers had fallen off the door, you wouldn't know which one was yours. But they were square, they were symmetric, cheap, and served a great purpose of getting young people onto the housing ladder.
Yeah.
So I'm certainly not critical of them. But then we went into the normality of large apartment blocks. And I've seen over the last 10 or 15 years ago, if you were marketing a development like any of these around here, if it hadn't got a pool, if it hadn't got a gym, if it hadn't got a private cinema, if it hadn't got a library, if it hadn't got recreational spaces, you wouldn't sell it.
Yeah.
But of course now, 10 or 15 years on, everybody's going to say, Christ, look at the service charge I'm having to pay now. Look at the regeneration costs I'm having to pay after such a short period of time.
Yeah.
So I do wonder whether simplifying the product that we're offering for, I'm going to say housing rather than rental investment or attraction to overseas buyers. I do wonder whether it does need to be toned down a bit.
I do agree with the all those extra services that people are providing. I used to work on a Berkeley Group scheme that was 955 units, and you're only really putting in those pools, the spas, the golf simulators to sell and put it in the brochure.
Yeah.
When people moved into those developments, very, very few people actually used them. You know, it's kind of just sitting there dead.
I live just across the road, and we've probably got some of the best recreational facilities there, the pool, etc. If I was to go in there now, it'd be empty.
Yeah,
absolutely empty. But didn't stop them having to spend a couple of £1 million 2 years ago on renewing all the swimming pool pumps and retiling and everything else,
which is paid for by the service charge.
But
like you say.
Is it possible to build nice-looking homes without high cost because of
there is a
design?
cost to design.
Because if you go to like Scandinavia, Denmark, Sweden, they have beautiful houses for normal people. It's the way they're designed. For a start, they don't have PVC windows that cheapen the whole place. So does that have to be compromised, you think?
I mean, yes, really. You know, if you want, you pay for quality, and it's as simple as that.
Yeah, but the aesthetics of it. It's like the Japanese is all about minimalism, isn't it?
Yeah, from a design perspective, I think it depends what type of design you're talking about. Is it the aesthetics of, because design can be aesthetics or it could be functionality, and I think often the functionality is often overlooked. There's a lot of technology that people are putting into properties now, which could be seen as additional extravagance in terms of design. And actually, a lot of people aren't using that technology. I know we installed ceiling built-in speakers with our Berkeley Group scheme, and the uptake on people using them was like 30%. So we'd put all that infrastructure in, spent all that money putting it in there, and people weren't using it.
But Ben, many years ago, I was talking to quite an experienced developer who said to me, of course you realise why architects create such complex building designs, in other words, being round or rectangular instead of just being square. Mm-hmm. I said, because they get a percentage of the cost of the building, and the more complex they make it, right, the more their fees.
Yeah, I don't buy into that.
Any mileage there?
Something you want to tell us?
I don't really buy into it. I mean, I think fundamentally, it is a really tough industry, and if having run an architectural practice for 8 years and understand, I feel like we're an efficient business. We've got 15 people in the team, and if I showed people what margin we make in terms of net margin, people would be shocked. I think people think architects make a lot of money. They really don't. It's a really tough industry. There's a lot of change, and there's a lot of input from clients that go back and forth, and scope creep is huge because people change their mind. And
the last thing you want is a client interfering. Heaven forbid.
Well, I mean, there's interfering, and there's interfering. It's you get your brief from your client, you provide what you think is right, they agree to it, and then 2 weeks later they change their mind and you're going back and revisiting the drawing board. And it happens all the time, and it's expected that we suck that price up, and that's a bit of a rant.
All right. We'll move on. We'll forgive you. We'll forgive you and move on. Yeah. Vincent, how does the UK compare to other countries worldwide for popularity in the buy-to-let market? It seems that many overseas investors invest in UK property. However, I don't know of many UK residents that invest abroad other than in holiday homes.
I think throughout the world, people are very enthusiastic about property investment, primarily as a place of abode. But the UK market is especially popular because of the buy-to-let mortgage that has existed since 1995, I believe, or 93. Yeah. It's the only country in the world where you can just get a mortgage without having to prove affordability, as long as the rental stacks up and you can put down 25% deposit, and you only have to pay the interest on it. And so that's really fueled the buy-to-let market, and that's why, if you speak to anybody, 8 out of 10 people probably have 1 or 2 homes in the UK, maybe not as many. But in other countries, people do invest in property, but usually we're talking about new build investments. If you go to Dubai, you go to Singapore, Malaysia, Hong Kong, they all invest in new developments.
That comes back to a point that I made in an earlier programme, Vincent, when I say that the success of building the number of houses we need in this country comes down to the purchaser's ability to be able to finance them.
Yeah, of course.
And if they can't get the low deposit, cheap mortgages that are affordable, there's no point in hitting the number, because nobody's going to be able to afford them anyway.
Yeah.
And the rental income is going to be geared to the success of those developments or not.
Yeah, that's from a house building's perspective. But talking about, the popularity of property investing in the UK compared to other countries, definitely UK is way up there because of the easy access to mortgage finance. Okay,
and but in other countries you have got. I was wondering the other day, in China there's been a construction catastrophe. Really,
completely.
Right now, has that put Chinese people off investing in property? Has it put them off investing in property in England? Or has it just made them, no thank you very much?
Not at all. Chinese investors actually don't invest in China. Those houses were actually built for China's policy in the next 50 years, not like in the Western governments where we have the 4-year policy,
next
right?
Week.
Yeah, they actually are preparing for an explosion of population growth. So Chinese investors who are cash rich, they rather put their money elsewhere. But the only difficulty in bringing the money into the UK is money laundering, obviously. But if they can somehow bring the money to the UK, they would rather buy property here.
Seems to be still coming, doesn't it?
100%, yes.
Okay. Well, we won't delve into that one any deeper, probably.
No, but if you talk about other countries like Dubai or even in Malaysia, where I operate extensively, there is a huge oversupply of properties. But there are also investment opportunities in the secondary market.
Right.
When people buy new build, usually they just want somewhere to park the money and they're not worried about the rental income.
But the Dubai market's very hit and miss, isn't it? It's either up there or down there.
Yeah, it's very cyclical, obviously, and definitely right now you see a lot of empty properties in Dubai, and the agents are finding it extremely difficult to sell them. So now they're resorting to social media, doing a lot of nice videos, talking about the opportunities.
We've just got 1 minute left.
Yeah.
And forgive me, Ben, for just aiming this at Vincent. I keep seeing on the television all these futuristic development areas that they're building in Saudi and close by, and they look phenomenal. But I wonder how sustainable they are. When the developer's gone away and all these, jet golf buggies and glass buildings in the side of a mountain need glass replacement and window and all the rest of it. Who's going to be funding this? Are these just going to turn into great big white elephants that are just a sort of status symbol for the ruling party?
Oh, it must be, because you talk about Saudi, right?
Yeah. So
that they must be just maintaining these infrastructures and buildings just to attract foreign investments. They want Saudi to be the next Dubai. And you can see in sporting venues, in boxing, they're just trying to outdo Dubai altogether.
Well, I suppose if you can pay $100 million to have Tyson Fury fight there, you can do whatever you like, can't you?
If that was worth it at all, to be honest.
Anyway, okay. Well, that's all we've got time for in this half of the show. So join me again after the break and we'll be asking Ben and Vincent more of your questions. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of Property Question Time with Ben Richards and Vincent Wong. Ben, will the government's promise to provide 300 new planning officers nationwide really free up the planning blockages that currently exist? I reckon I know the answer to that.
I mean, it's just scratching the surface, really. It will help, but will it help enough? I don't think it will. I think we need far more than that. My question when the government always announced these types of 300 people for this, 4,000 new NHS, it's where are these people coming from? If these people wanted to be in the industry, they'd be in the industry.
Same place as the 40 new hospitals.
Exactly, yeah. It's all well and good sort of pulling out these numbers, but the reality of the situation is that you've got private planning practices that are paying maybe 65, 70 grand for a planning consultant, and you've got the government spending £45,000 on a planning officer's salary, and that's the deficit. Who's going to want to work for a public office at that lower level when they graduate from university? It's just not going to happen. So, I'd like to see some incentivization from the government to try and bring these people in. What that looks like, I don't know. The 300 people, I think, is 0.86 per council or something silly like that. Is one person per office going to make the difference? No, but it's extra resource that is needed.
Do you think? Do you think the days of a 10 or 12 person lay committee are over? Really,
I certainly hope so. I've been to many of them, and I think I said last time I spoke to you, the last one that I went to, one of the 12 people on the committee were asleep. Sleeping during it just doesn't work. You need people that are professionals that understand the house building sector, the property industry.
It's so complex these days.
It's very complex. It's so difficult. So to rely on somebody living in the local village that wants to every Tuesday night go and have a chinwag with their friends to decide on the future of us, developers, homeowners, renters, it's just not the right process at all.
No. The consideration priorities are never right, are they? And because they're not professionals, they are guided and led by their own beliefs, preferences and biases. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I personally think it's time to go. What do you think, Vincent? You don't care.
No, to be honest, I really don't have a
clue. you just want to buy what's there, don't you?
Absolutely, yes.
At least they've acknowledged the fact that they need to change something, and they've made a gesture to try and improve the planning system. I think the way that the planning reform on the grey belt is a good step in the right direction. They've acknowledged that planning is a bottleneck, and if they're at least acknowledging that, that's a good step in the right direction for us.
I mean, I've got a very good friend who's planning KC, and he says the trouble is now, he said, a lot of these appeals that he appears should never be appeals. They should have never made that particular decision in the first place. Should have just been
delegated powers and agreed.
It's just £100,000-200,000 gravy train for lawyers and whoever else is involved.
Yeah,
it's not right.
If I've got time for one more thing, I mean, I do think the number of reports and assessments that are required by the planning authority now are ludicrous. You've got things that could be decided and determined by the building control process about energy statements and efficiencies that is now being brought forward to the planning process. So that whole process is extenuated. The planning officers don't know what they're looking at when they get a noise report through the door. They're not experts in that. They don't really know how to assess it. It shouldn't be planning to resolve those things.
No, but Ben, the other point is this goes right the way through the industry. If you go wider than planning and look at financing, the amount, we get a lot of lenders in here doing programs, brokers and direct lenders themselves, and they will all say that the demands now on solicitors for information before finance is granted has just trebled, quadrupled. And of course, what that's doing, it's contributing to this almost now 6-month expectation of a property to sell. Mm-hmm. From reservation to completion, we're heading towards 6 months. And it's because of this appetite for more and more information. And I suppose this is the downside of a data-led society, isn't it, I suppose?
Red tape and regulation. Yeah, there's a place for it, but it's can be too much.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Vincent, how are you going to put all that right? Okay.
No idea.
It seems that property funding in the UK has become more difficult in recent years, probably due to the crash post-2008. What do the panel think it would take to free up lending criteria, and in reality, should it be freed up?
Well, has it really been more difficult, or was it actually far too easy prior to the crash in 2008? That's a question.
You tell me.
Well, I think it is as difficult as it should be right now. And in fact, I think getting mortgages in the UK from a buy-to-let perspective is extremely easy, because you don't even have to prove your income as such, as long as the deal actually stacks up from the rentals perspective. But from an investor's point of view, which is what I'm standing up for most of the time, we've got to have to be prepared for alternative sources of funding. We can't just rely on mortgage finance. For example, there are private investors out there who've got money sitting in a bank, not doing anything, not earning any interest. And they would welcome an opportunity to work with investors who've got genuine property deals, because everyone can relate to property for a start, and also you can securitize on the assets. That's one. And also in countries where funding is extremely difficult, they are more creative in terms of the strategies they're using acquiring property. And previously we've spoken about using lease option and rent to buy. There are a lot of homeowners who are struggling to pay the mortgages, and you can just go in and structure a deal that is win-win, in which you alleviate the mortgage payment and you have a fixed price for a period of time. So there are different ways to skin a cat, but I just don't think that we have to put too much emphasis on mortgage financing in acquiring property.
But if you talk about private investors, I suppose the difficulty is accessing those people or finding them in the first place.
Well, actually, contrary to what people believe, private investors are not like the dragons behind the desk, with a pile of money. These are just normal individuals who've got savings in the bank, and they don't know they are investors until you present to them opportunities. So if you have a project that you have worked out all the numbers, you've stacked the deal, and you can present it to them in a nice, coherent plan, and they can see, number one, how quickly they can get the money back. Number two, what return are they going to get? Number three, what security you've got to offer, then it's a huge opportunity.
But how do you get to them?
I'll have a word with you later on after the show, perhaps. They're everywhere.
Networking,
and
social media.
Definitely,
Yeah.
networking.
We've raised significant amounts of money through all of those routes from people, just like you were saying there, people that you wouldn't necessarily expect to come out of the woodwork and say,
and is that the way we should go?
Well, I think definitely it's a huge opportunity. You know, we raise finance all the time. And a lot of investors who need to do a development, and obviously you can't get finance unless it's bridging finance, which is extremely costly. Now they're turning to private investors for finance. But you have to understand that it's not just a case of going to, ask for the money. You've got to have to build some trust, and you have to be investable as a person.
But bridging is a relatively new concept in terms of volume, isn't it? Because what you've got now is you want to go and buy a bit of land, there may be conditions on the purchase of that land or whatever else. So the obvious port of call is bridging finance. Will you bridge me while I buy it until I can put it into a solid proposition to go to my long-term lender?
Yeah.
Now, it's always a surprise to me that the bridging finance people are never interested in the long-term bit, are they?
No, they're not. That's why they're a
they don't want to step in.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've now got two lots of lenders' fees that you've got to pay, which is just adding.
Yeah, but it's priced into the deals. It doesn't matter. I think we need to look at a bigger picture and not be penny-wise and pound-foolish.
Well, yeah, but hold on, Vincent. Look, it's like me saying to you, well, developers are so well off that the cost of a 106 agreement doesn't matter because they've got so much money they can just burn it. So we might as well have some of it for social good. But the real fact is that the developer will say, okay, if the 106 agreement is going to cost me 2 million quid, I'm building 500 flats, so that's 500 into 2 million. I'll just add it onto the price of the flats and let all the kids suffer.
It's not about adding to the price of the flat in the sense of when you're using bridging finance to do a smaller scale development.
Isn't it?
Yeah, but the cost is actually built into the deal. When you refinance, it will cover all your initial costs. And the end result is that you're actually using none of your money. There's no money left
That's
in
the dream,
deal.
The dream, isn't it?
It is. It's not a dream. This is what
I mean, it does happen.
people are doing.
We've done
we
it
are
numerous
doing
times,
it all the time.
But it is, yeah.
People don't know what they don't know. When you have a genuine deal and you're using OPM, that's not for other people's money.
Yeah, I know this, but what we've got to watch, Vincent, is I'm loath to argue against you because you're a very successful entrepreneur, and I feel sort of rather difficult in saying these things. But if you take two buildings here, right? I live in a building over there, and the same developer is building something down the road. Now, all the people in my building see what he's now trying to achieve in terms of price on the new building, and they think, oh, so if I put mine on the market, they're trying to get 1,500 quid a foot rather than the 1,200 quid a foot I thought I was going to get. So I'm going to put mine on the market at 1,500 quid a foot or at 1,490 to give me a little bit of an edge, but it takes my price right up there. And what it's doing is just mushrooming inflation. And the people that suffer here are the people that want real housing.
Can I correct you just for a moment?
You can.
Stephen? Well, you're talking in terms of selling houses to the investors who want to buy in, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about raising money for your own project, but in return, you give a higher return on the investors' money than what they get from the bank, securitized on the property. So they're getting actually more for their money. We're not inflating the whole thing.
But who pays for it?
We do as the developer.
The end user pays.
Well, I don't know.
No, the banks actually pay because you refinance on the GDV.
Somebody's getting paid
Right.
interest and somebody's getting paid fees. I do agree with Vincent in terms of, we've raised over 14 million in equity and over 40 million in debt over the last 5 years. I would take private equity every day of the week. There's so much red tape and complication with the debt.
But again,
provision.
that costs money in itself.
But both cost money. There's a cost of capital. Equity is often more expensive, but you're sharing the risk, I guess, and often overlooked by new developers, whereby they think all they want is debt and lower debt, 10%, whatever. Whereas there's developments that we've done where we would come unstuck very easily if we didn't have an equity partner that was sharing the risk, where we're not paying that 8 or 10%. So it's horses for courses, and there's different wants and needs for different pots of the the funding.
Okay, well, on that cautionary note, we'll end the programme sort of after having a Mrs. Merton extreme argument moment. But anyway, no, thank you both very much for your input today. I'm sure everybody is very interested in what we've had to say today. It does matter to us all, and we just hope that in the future years we do start to solve the housing crisis that we have. Anyway, there we are. Big thank you to Vincent Wong from Welsh Dragons Group PLC, and also from Ben Richards, Aura Architects. So that's all we've got time for. See you again next time. My name's Stephen Galpin. Look forward to seeing you then.